Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're going to talk about elk hunting burn areas and how post-fire habitat can concentrate bulls if you know what you're looking at. A lot of hunters see a burn scar on a map and immediately think they've found elk, but a burn by itself, it doesn't mean much. Fire can create better feed, sure, more edge habitat, new travel routes, and easier glassing, but it can also create wide open country that elk only use at night because every hunter in the unit can see it too. The key is learning how to read what the fire actually changed. Where did it create food? Where did it leave cover? Where did it improve visibility? Where did it increase pressure? And how can a bull feed, bed, escape, and stay alive? Because the burn isn't the spot. The burn is the starting point. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent elk hunter. Now, fire can absolutely make elk country better because it resets the habitat. When a fire moves through a mountain, it can open up the canopy, recycle nutrients, and create space for new growth, and that new growth can become high-quality feed for elk. We're talking grasses, forbs, shrubs, young browse, and the kind of green tender vegetation elk can key in on when the timing is right. But here's the mistake a lot of elk hunters make. They think every burn instantly becomes good elk habitat, and it doesn't, not in my opinion. Fresh burn might look dramatic on a map, but if the vegetation hasn't come back yet, it might not offer much. Elk don't use a burn because it looks good to us. They use it because it gives them something they need. So the real question isn't, did this area burn, right? The real question is, what did the fire create that elk can use right now? That's where the strategy starts. A burn changes every year after the fire. That's why you can't judge a burn only by the year it burned. A 1-year-old burn, a 5-year-old burn, and a 15-year-old burn can all hunt completely different. Early on, the burn might be too exposed or too raw to hold much daylight elk use. As vegetation starts coming back, though, it can become a strong feeding area. A few years later, it might have the perfect mix of feed, visibility, edge habitat, and cover. Then, as the habitat keeps changing, certain areas might become brushier, thicker, or less attractive depending on the vegetation and moisture. The best timeline isn't always newer is better either. The best timeline is when the burn has enough regrowth to feed elk and enough nearby security to let bulls use it in daylight. So don't just ask when it burned, ask what it looks like right now. What phase are we in? Not all burns are created equal. A low severity patchy burn is a completely different from a high severity burn that wiped out everything across a whole slope. For elk hunting, the best burns are often the broken ones. They have variety, they have openings, timber strips, unburned islands, brushy pockets, deadfall, benches, and edges. That kind of burn gets me excited because it gives elk that kind of burn gets me excited because it gives elk options. They can feed in the open, slip into cover, bed close by, and move without exposing themselves for too long. Huge, clean, wide open burn might look amazing from a glassing knob, but if there's no cover nearby, mature bulls might not use it much during legal light, so does it even matter? The center of a severe burn can turn into nighttime feed. The edges and broken pockets are where things get interesting. Elk don't need the whole mountain to burn, they need the right pieces of the mountain to change. The middle of a big burn gets a lot of attention from hunters a lot of times, right? Hunters love to glass it because they can see. Hunters hike through it. Hunters mark it on every mapping app and think that's where the elk should be feeding. But bulls don't survive by standing in the most obvious place on the mountain. A lot of the best elk activity happens in the edges of the burns. That could be a hard edge where the burn meets dark timber. It could be soft edge where grass, brush, and young trees are coming back. It could be a finger of cover that reaches into the burn or a small opening that's tucked behind the main visible slope. Bulls might feed into that burn at night, then bed just off the edge before daylight. That edge is the connecting point. Food on one side, security on the other. If you only hunt the middle, you're often hunting where elk were. The edge is where you catch them moving. Now, bulls might feed in the burns, but they still need security, right? That's one of the biggest filters you can use when you're looking at any elk country, but especially burn country. If the burn has feed, but no escape cover, or no bedding cover, or no rugged terrain, and no way for a bull to disappear, it might look good, but hunt poorly. Security cover doesn't always mean thicker timber either. It can be just brush, it can be steep terrain, it can be deadfall, it can be a north facing pocket, it can be an unburned island inside the burn, it can be just distance from roads and people. So during hunting season, especially once pressure builds, bulls aren't just asking, where's the food? They're asking, where can I eat and still survive? That's why burns connected to bedding cover are so valuable. Food alone creates sign. Food plus security creates daylight opportunity. So if the burn has both, you need to pay attention to that spot. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post-Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory, it's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. And a burn isn't just one habitat either, right? It's a patchwork of small habitats, micro habitats, if you will. South facing slopes, those might green up earlier, but they can also dry out faster. North and east facing slopes might hold moisture longer and keep better feed later into the season. Benches, seep lines, creek pockets, shaded draws, and small drainages, those can all recover differently inside the same burn. So that's why two slopes in the same burn can hunt completely differently. One side might be dry, crunchy, and dead looking by September, and another might still have green feed tucked into those shaded pockets. Elk obviously know the difference. They don't use the whole burn evenly, so you shouldn't either as the hunter. Elk key in on the specific pieces that match the season, temperature, moisture, and hunting pressure. So when you're e-scouting or glassing a burn, don't just outline the perimeter. Break it down by its slope aspect, the shade. Is there water there? What's the elevation like? And look at the regrowth. That's how you find the part elk are actually using. So when you stack feed, water, cover, and security all together, a burn gets a lot more interesting, right? During warm archery seasons, elk still need water. Bulls might hit springs, seeps, creek bottoms, wallows, and shaded wet pockets near those burn edges. But the best water usually isn't the most obvious water. I just did a video a couple of days ago about hunting elk on water, so check that out if you get a chance. We'll dive into that deep. But real briefly, a pond sitting in the open middle of a burn might get hammered by hunters, but a small seep tucked below the burn edge, inside cover, with a good escape route nearby, that can be a whole lot better, right? Wallows near a burn edge can tell you bulls are spending time in that system. But again, you have to read the whole picture. Is there bedding cover nearby? Can the bull approach with the wind right? Can he leave without crossing exposed country where hunters can more easily see him? The best setup isn't just burns plus water. It's burns plus water plus cover plus wind plus low hunting pressure. That's when a burn can become a real concentration zone. So the easiest burns to find are usually the easiest burns for every other hunter to find, right? If a burn is visible from the road or easy to glass, easy to walk, and obvious on every map, you should assume other hunters know about it too, and they're probably going to be looking there. That doesn't mean elk won't use it, but it might mean that they use it at the wrong times, like night or too early in the morning or only before the pressure builds. Roads and human pressure are going to change how elk use that burned country too. A great feeding area close to an open road can turn into a trap for hunters instead of elk. You see sign, you see tracks, you see poop, but you don't see bulls in daylight, and that's because the elk already adjusted. So you have to look deeper, look rougher, look for the hidden edge, look for the ugly access, look where the burn connects to cover away from the obvious approach routes. The best burn isn't always the prettiest one. It's the one that other hunters don't hunt correctly. Now, when you e-scout a burn, don't just mark the fire perimeter and call it good. Break it into usable elk zones. This is one of the keys to scouting, good e-scouting, right? We need to have a plan, not just pins on a map. So first, look at the burn shape. Is it one giant open scar or is it broken and patchy? Then look for unburned islands or timber fingers, maybe shaded slopes or brushy pockets, those benches that I love to talk about, saddles and drainages. Next, find the food zones. Where does the regrowth look the strongest? Where are the open feeding pockets? Where does the burn meet cover? Then find the bedding zones. Look for north and east slopes, timbered edges, steep folds, benches below cover, and places bulls can bed with wind and visibility in their favor. Now, after that, add water and pressure. Where are the roads? Where are the trails? Where will hunters glass from? Where will they walk from? Your goal is to scout the elk system the burn created. The same feed, bed, water, travel, pressure, and access that we always talk about in non-burned areas. That's the map that matters. Now, burns are really easy to overhunt also because the visibility makes hunters careless near them, right? You can see more, so you start moving more. You can glass more, so you assume you're safe. You find signs, so you walk right through the feeding area trying to prove elk are there. That's how you blow it out. Treat a good burn like a bedding to feeding system. Glass from a distance first. Try not to get in the middle of it. Don't skyline yourself. Don't march through the middle unless you're already deciding that that area is dead. Pay attention to wind and thermals. In the morning, elk might be moving back toward cover. In the evening, they're probably going to stage near the edge before they enter the burn after dark. Your setup should be where elk leave security, not necessarily where the burn looks best. If sign is heavy but daylight sightings are poor, you're going to need to move closer to that bedding cover. Don't hunt the burn like an opening. Hunt it like a food source connected to elk survival. Fire does not make elk easy. It makes their choices more readable. So if you understand what changed, you can get ahead of the game. A burn can create better feed, more edge, easier glassing, new travel routes, bedding pockets, and powerful concentration zones. But bulls still need security. That is always going to be the top priority. They still need wind. They still avoid human pressure, and they still use terrain to survive. That's why the best elk hunters I know don't just mark every burn scar on the map and hope for the best. They read the burn like a living system. They ask what came back, what stayed standing, is the moisture, where is the pressure, where the elk can bed, and how a bull can use that country without exposing himself. That's the difference. Don't hunt a burn just because it's a burn. Hunt it because you understand what the fire forced elk to do next. Now, if you want to go deeper into elk movement, pressure patterns, terrain positioning, and structured decision making, that's exactly why I built the elk hunting series of ebooks. It's a progressive system designed to help you understand how elk actually use country and how to position yourself accordingly. I have a link to those ebooks in the description. And if you want hands-on application and real-time breakdowns, we have an in-person Elk Camp 2026 that is built around this same philosophy: structure, preparation, execution in real terrain. You can check out Elk Camp at backboneunlimited.com. And if you want ongoing access to the Team Backbone community, classroom, my full digital vault of elk resources, private discussions, and direct communication to me for planning, you can join Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Everything we talk about here is connected. Preparation is not a single video, it's a system. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you. Reach out to me in the comments with questions. Love to hear from you. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.